There's a hopelessness associated with succession, and if you can't move the buck forward, you feel very trapped. Man's supposed to be leading in that space, and what he does is that he burdens his family around him, and he sees that and he goes, I'm just a burden. They're better off without me.
Farmers not wanting to speak about having thoughts about hurting themselves because they will get their firearms taken away from them.
If there is any kind of red flag that goes up, or there go your guns, and you're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Pride is a killer.
Welcome to hard ground. Welcome to hard ground.
Suicide. Heavy one.
Maybe that's why I feel tired, because my heart feels heavy after those ones.
Well, that's where we're going. We've been into a couple of conversations. This is something I think it's gotten an enormous response. I think things that are so close to the heart like this, it's intrinsically linked with what we've been talking about and discussing, and really, it's just another internal factor, isn't it?
Well, that's what I found really fascinating. Obviously, we haven't aired this episode yet, but what I found fascinating about the conversation with Mary from Are You Bogged Mate was that she said so many men who come to her, a lot of the catalyst for feeling as blue as they do has to do with succession planning.
Yeah. Well, there's a hopelessness associated with succession, and if you can't move the buck forward, you feel very trapped.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's amazing how many conversations, how much succession and that entire plethora of things that includes is responsible for people, feeling so at a loss.
That's the thing. Like, we really are trying to address what are some of the major internal factors associated with agriculture, family farms. That's really eroding. It's eroding this show.
And I just want to say as a disclaimer, I did have a few people reach out and just say, don't forget the women with suicide. And absolutely, that's, we don't want to forget anybody, especially around that topic. However, what we discovered was the representation of suicide between men and women. It's so heavily weighed toward the men.
Massive.
Like huge. The numbers are huge for men. And I think that's the question we want to ask is, what are the women doing differently that mean we feel we have more support and more places to go for feeling down? Or is that just the way we work as women?
I think you're just you're wired differently. You're wired differently, and you don't have the same kinds of I'm not trying to be careful. I'm just trying to speak this correctly in what I actually really think. But I think that men carry a lot and burden themselves a lot with the weights of the weight of achievement and being able to make sure that they've actually they're actually of value, that they're worth something.
I know, but I think that we were talking about some situations where
I'm not saying that that's not what women think either. I don't know. It's just different. Like
it's so hard because off the back of some of those conversations that we've had about men, the women will then also shoulder that. They'll also shoulder the stress and worry of
but that's the
farm, their family, and their husband that's not coping.
So that's what I reckon, though.
So, why can women handle that?
Because a man's supposed to be leading in that space, and what he does is that he burdens his family around him, and he sees that, and he goes, I'm just a burden. They're better off without me. So...
No, but my question is and I'm not saying that women are emotionally stronger than men, per se, or vice versa, or anything like that. But no. I do, we talk about this stuff a lot with men and women and the importance of different roles. And what I'm seeing or hearing is that in society, when we've got this kind of epidemic of men who are, for whatever reason, for all these different reasons that society is breaking down the role of men or the importance of men and all this kind of stuff,
Mm.
we see women having to step up to the plate. And I don't like that for women, but they do it.
Yeah, they do.
And what allows them to do it? Is it out of necessity? Is it out of
It's totally out of necessity.
a maternal instinct of like, I have to protect my family?
There's a necessity because he's not doing it, or we're not doing it. And there's always the desire to do so in some way, shape, or form. You need the certainty, and the certainty comes in the shape of control.
Yes, but I'm asking what's missing for the men that they're not stepping up and doing that. So it's forcing women into this position.
I think that there's a couple of things. One, we are in a perpetual state of victimhood. That is really gutting to a man's character and to his resolve. A lot of us are ungrounded and unfounded in Christ. We no longer have anything to cling to when things get really, really dark.
Yeah.
It's bigger than people, bigger than mates, bigger than family and friends. It's bigger than that, because a lot of these guys feel like they can't bring this stuff to them, and they hold on to it to the point of death. And I think there is if you don't hold it, if you don't have your shit together, you just don't want to expose that. Like, and I'm not saying that you should just, you don't want to air your dirty laundry. You don't want to go and, let everybody know that you're having a shit time or a shit day. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying it's a fact of reality that, if something's really eroding behind closed doors, that's the reality that you're living in. And it's going to have a really bad consequence whether people know about it or not. So I think that they feel trapped inside of that space. Like, I can't talk about this because if I do, what does that mean? One of the biggest fears that a man has is public humiliation. Public humiliation is terrifying because there's a depth of exposure that occurs that, confirms stories in the mind that might say, this is what you really are. And if you go down into that rabbit hole,
dangerous.
I just think that it racks shame. It's like shame and guilt and self-worth and all that kind of stuff starts to knock at the door. And you go into a real bloody spiraling head loop. But I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. I've done a lot to do with this sort of thing in these conversations, but that's it. I don't
think you're far off the mark. I think, remember when Mary was using the example of men getting bogged, like physically, on the farm, you get bogged and you've got to call your neighbours to get you out if it's really bad. And then that becomes the butt of all the jokes. And then that gets thrown around every time someone's at the pub, and it's the story that keeps coming up. And that's funny. That scenario is actually funny. But I think she was kind of saying when men think they're going to be outed or shame put on them, even for admitting that they had to call their neighbours for help. When you put that across to something like feeling down and feeling like you've got thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself, you don't want that to live over you forever. Yeah. So I don't think you're far off the mark at all.
I also think that it's just, as soon as it starts to affect your competency, it starts to affect your decision making, and you're the one who's meant to be, at the head of the helm of the ship, sort of thing. And that's called out on you by those closest to you. They start to question whether what are you doing, where that's going. It all builds pressure.
What I'm really interested in, then I think what I'm very fascinated by this conversation that we will be having with an ex-police officer was the point that he brought up about farmers not wanting to speak about having, thoughts about hurting themselves because they will get their firearms taken away from them. And I was like, whoa, what a good point.
Yeah, it's quite counterintuitive, isn't it? Like, I mean, you want to retain, like the guns side of things, like they're a tool. Yeah, that's what they are to us.
Mm.
But they have so much more of a stigma associated with in this country that if there is anything that would suggest that you are not in any way, shape, or form stable and you could do harm to yourself
Or others.
but this is like you're talking about having a hard day, like you're in a rut. It doesn't mean that you need to go and hand in your guns. It's like what you need is you need you need as many barriers removed from your way to be able to go and seek the help or find the help as is needed. But if there is any kind of red flag that goes up, or there go your guns, you're like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you can
Well,
understand why
there's a
people
stigma
don't speak
associated.
about it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. It's a tricky zone because on one hand, it's like we need to talk about all this. Yes. Another hand, it's like, all right, to what degree? To what degree do we talk about it to the point where it becomes just vain repetition in some respect? It's like mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health, mental health, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but I think it's coming back to the whole thing about succession. We must talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, it festers. And I think that's something Ben Law said on one of his. Oh no, it was actually George Morris. He said, the F word that I hate in farming is festering, things that go unspoken. And this is no different. I know what you're saying, like on a national scale, and there's a lot of campaigns around it. But what we've found, even speaking to Mary, that a lot of them go nowhere. And even on the ground, in some cases in the medical industry, people aren't trained to handle or help someone who's in a really bad way.
That was an eye-opener, wasn't it?
Crazy.
Wow.
And so, yes, like to what you're saying, okay, we can talk about it, but if people don't actually know how to help, and it's not actually trickling down to where it needs to go, then there's a lot of hot air and not a lot of action.
I think that what you see is you need to be able to communicate this to. And this is one of the things, again, with Mary, which is really quite profound, is like, how do you communicate to the people that need it? And there are going to be those who will, and those who are too damn proud to ever let go of what it is that they're internalizing. Pride is a killer. Pride, closely linked with shame, closely linked with guilt, that will make you hold damn tight onto all the baggage, Joel, that you've got going on.
Oh, and you look at all the stuff that we've been speaking about in Succession. How many relationship breakdowns there are because of pride or holding on to what we think we deserve. And yeah, it's a huge, huge, huge topic. And it is really difficult, because this is why, even starting with the Succession and focusing so much on that this season has been such an eye-opener on the can of worms that is opened from just that conversation. It goes into so many facets of life, especially in this, beautiful farming community that we know and love. And we're just seeing everywhere you turn, there's breakdowns happening in families, and families are busting apart. And it really, so much of it comes back to, what is our ability to push through the fire, to come out the other side so that we can continue the relationships that we want to have? Too often we stop in the middle of the fire and we all get burnt up.
Welcome to hard ground. Welcome to hard ground.